Number 10. The T-95 Super Tank. Russia has a long history of designing some pretty bizarre prototype weapons. Normally, these prototypes never actually reach the construction phase. But the T-95 super tank, built at the end of the Cold War, was indeed built as a tank to end all tanks. Had development continued, the T-95 probably would have been the scariest tank in the world. But the technology was eventually abandoned in favor of the less interesting T-14 Armata. The tank was part of the Object 195 project. Designing started in 1988 with the idea to make a heavy tank that would outclass all NATO armor. This meant the crew members were stuffed into an interior compartment with the turret being unmanned. The tank was also fitted with explosive reactive armor and composite armor, along with soft kill systems whose capabilities are still unknown to this day. It was also given a 152mm 2A83 smoothbore gun, which boasts an amazing muzzle velocity of around 6,000 feet per second. The tank also had 152mm howitzers for firing all manner of artillery rounds. But alas, they actually only ever built one single prototype. The T-95 tank was simply too big and too bad for this day and age. They went with the T-14, which comes equipped with more technological features like jamming capabilities. Number 9. The Rolling Rocket Bomb. The rolling rocket bomb was one of the worst ideas in military history. It was designed to kill Nazis, but instead it killed somebody's dog. The rolling rocket bomb is actually known as the Panjandrum, and it's arguably one of the biggest flops in military history. The British concocted this bizarre device to break through the German defenses when storming the beaches of Normandy. Here's how it worked. The engineers attached rockets onto two giant wheels joined together by a drum axle. The axle was lined with deadly explosives. The rockets were supposed to propel the wheel up the beach, and then the bombs would blow up the Germans. In theory, this sounded great, but the technology totally bombed, pun very much intended. When they tested it out, the Panjandrum flew up the beach, the rockets dislodged, and the whole thing exploded. An army officer's dog chased one of the rockets down the beach and was killed in the attempt. Immediately after, the technology was abandoned. Number 8. The Failed Nazi Rocket. The V-2 was an utter failure of Nazi technology. Each V-2 rocket was about 46 feet high and carried a ton of explosives, literally. In the autumn of 1944, the Germans used their newly developed rocket technology to attack London. The very first V-2 rocket plunged down onto the city, gouging out a 32-foot crater and killing 3 people. These were a massive upgrade from the V-1 flying bombs, but not quite revolutionary enough for Hitler to win the war. It was a kind of last-ditch effort to defeat the British, but it didn't work. They fired over 1,300 of these missiles at England, Belgium, and France. Perhaps 2,700 people in Britain were killed, according to the BBC. But it could have been up to 20,000, including those who died constructing the V-2 rockets. One of the biggest deals about the V-2 rocket was that it used an automatic guidance system. It was one of the first rockets programmable to hit a particular spot while being operated by a controller on the ground. In that way, it wasn't really a failed technology, just a failed attempt at victory for the Germans. When the Germans lost the war, the Americans and Soviets scrambled to get their hands on the tech first. It would be the Russians who captured the V-2 factory and their test range, then reverse-engineered the technology to use it for themselves. Number 7. The Wind Cannon. The wind cannon was developed by the Germans as a weapon that could create an artificial tornado. The whole idea was that the Germans could fire their wind cannon at enemy aircraft, creating a literal tornado that could destroy entire squadrons of planes. Weirdly enough, the Germans actually did a pretty good job. They created a vortex cannon that could create a tornado of up to 900 feet tall. The issue is that they couldn't get them tall enough to actually destroy any aircraft. The only thing they managed to destroy were wooden sheds. This weapon was called the Windkanone. It worked by filling up a large pipe with combustible gas, then sending the gas into a combustion chamber to spin a turbine. The rotating nozzle then released the gas into the atmosphere, drawing air into the rotation to create a vortex. It was a perfectly sound science, but it was honestly way ahead of its time. The wind cannon was abandoned, and as far as we know, nobody tried to build one since. But seeing as it's been almost a century, our advancement in technology probably means that somewhere out there, somebody's military knows how to make artificial tornadoes. How do you feel knowing there very well could be a machine out there capable of creating a massive tornado? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Curving bullets. The Krummlauf was another of Germany's failed secret weapons. It was a curved barrel clamped onto the end of a gun so that soldiers would fire bullets around obstacles. The original idea came in 1943 with the Germans thinking they could use a curved barrel to redirect bullets. One was made with a 30-degree bend and the other had a 90-degree bend. These would be mounted onto armored vehicles with an MP-44 caliber rifle sitting in a vertical position. The curved barrel was pointed through a port and attached to a swivel. The crew inside the tank could fire at the enemy all day long without ever being shot at themselves or hit with explosives. But, of course, it didn't really work. Bullets almost always broke in half as they traveled through the device, or the device itself would break. At best, the gun would fire maybe 100 rounds before completely falling apart. Number 5. The Ice Ship. An inventor working for the British Combined Operations Headquarters, one of the departments of the War Office, thought it would be a good idea to create an unsinkable island ship made completely of ice. The ice ship would be the best way for the Allies to prevent German U-boats from destroying all their vessels. The idea actually led to a small prototype being built in secret, approved by Winston Churchill himself. And when I say a small prototype, I mean a giant floating piece of ice that weighed 1,000 tons. Geoffrey Pike was the inventor of this bizarre contraption. Pike envisioned a gigantic ship made from ice instead of steel. But in reality, the ship would be built from ice and a pykrete mixture of wood pulp and frozen water, with the wood acting as reinforcement. The prototype was commissioned in 1943 to be constructed in Canada. The model, just 30 by 60 feet, was built on a lake in Alberta and kept frozen through the summer by using just one motor. It was actually quite successful, and a real ship was ordered to be built out of 300,000 tons of wood pulp, 25,000 tons of insulation, 10,000 tons of steel, and 35,000 tons of timber. The issue here, as you might have guessed from hearing all those numbers, is that it ended up costing way too much money. The ship would have been a mile in length and weighed over 2.2 million tons. The project was scrapped because of financial issues, and the technology has been abandoned ever since. The prototype can still be seen today at the bottom of Patricia Lake in Jasper National Park, Canada. It's still there, totally abandoned. Number 4. Forgotten Sea Forts. The Mountcel Army sea forts were used by the British during World War II to defend the shoreline. The forts were built as part of the Thames Estuary Defense Network, with anti-aircraft towers that doubled as forts built in 1942. Each fort was a cluster of stilted buildings branching out from a central command post. No aircraft could get past these forts without the British knowing. They were pivotal in keeping the Germans out of England. But after the war, they lost all relevance. There are only 2 left standing today out of the original 3, the Red Sands Fort and the Shivering Sands Fort. Originally, they were decommissioned in the 1950s. The Nore Army Fort was damaged by a storm and then struck by a boat and dismantled. The remaining forts were occupied by a pirate radio station in the 1970s. As recently as 2005, an artist named Stephen Turner squatted in one for 36 days and then wrote a book about isolation. As you can see, the abandoned forts have had quite the history. You can still see them on a clear day when standing on Showburyness East Beach. But nobody's actually allowed to go there, as they're considered extremely dangerous and are going to fall into the ocean at any time. Number 3. Cultivator Number 6. The Cultivator Number 6, also known as the White Rabbit Number 6, was a machine designed by the British Royal Navy for digging trenches at the start of World War II. The machine was lightly armored, it carried no weapons, and its purpose was to allow soldiers to advance on the enemy position while burrowing underground. The machine would dig a trench as the soldiers advanced behind it, thereby giving them a constant trench to hide in. Then, when the machine reached the enemy, it turned into a ramp that the soldiers could climb up. This sounded like a really good idea, but the problem was that it weighed 130 tons. It was an absolute beast, and Britain was only able to manufacture a small number of the machines. In the end, none of them were even used in combat. It just wasn't effective at actually breaking through enemy lines like Winston Churchill had hoped. He'd wanted this machine to turn the tide of trench warfare, but it did no such thing. All the machines were abandoned, about 33 of them, and never used for anything. Number 2. Antonov AN-24. The Antonov AN-24 comes to us from the Cold War era, a twin turboprop aircraft that is actually still in operation today. The Russian Air Force is still using the Antonov right now, though their numbers have dropped significantly and they've needed to be modernized. The first Antonov prototype was back in October of 1959, with production ending in 1979. There were around 1,300 of these transport aircraft made, with only 100 still in active duty as of 2020. China even made their own copy of the plane called the Y-7. There are also a lot of different variations of the Antonov. The AN-24 was designed strictly for battlefield conditions as military transport. This included anything from VIP passengers to general cargo. The truth is that these awesome planes weren't a failure at all. The technology simply got outdated, and hundreds of them were abandoned across the world. The only people who actually still use them are Russia, North Korea, Afghanistan, Cuba, and Bangladesh, just to name a few. Number 1. The Hypersonic Nuke Missile. Reports have been coming in lately that China is currently developing a hypersonic nuclear missile engine based on a design originally abandoned by NASA. This hypersonic missile engine will theoretically propel a nuclear weapon at 6,000 miles per hour. A Chinese research team has allegedly already built and tested a functional prototype. The prototype was based on a radical design put forth by NASA over 20 years ago, only to be abandoned because it was considered too costly. This new weapon allows a nuclear weapon to travel at over 5 times the speed of sound. The original technology comes from the Boeing Manta X-47C, developed back in the early 2000s and then abandoned by the US government because they thought it was too expensive. But as China's military rapidly advances, money doesn't seem to be an object for them. They've now allegedly built their own hypersonic missile system with an impressive range of over 1,500 miles. And at 6,000 miles per hour, well, a missile can reach its destination with startling haste. Thanks for watching. How do you feel about the existence of a hypersonic nuke missile? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video today, remember to hit subscribe to support the channel. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.